Welcome to Post Games, a podcast about how and why we love video games. I am your host, Chris Plant, and I am so happy to have you here to talk about Titanium Court. The trouble with Titanium Court, a new Match 3 strategy visual novel chimera of a video game, which I will add here will be inescapable during 2026 Game of the Year conversations, is that it is interesting for too many reasons. Maybe I begin with something provocative, like Titanium Court is the ultimate COVID game. Or I could, lean into gamer discourse and say, Titanium Court explains why solo development is never truly solo. Or how about I focus on one little detail that is so unusual, it's almost impossible to believe, like Titanium Court was made 1 hour at a time. For the sake of brevity, I'm going to go with the historical significance route. In March, Titanium Court won the Independent Games Festival's Seamus McNally Grand Prize. For the first episode of Post Games, nearly a year ago, I covered the Independent Games Festival's Grand Prize in depth. Previous winners include Minecraft, Fez, Papers, Please, Outer Wilds, Her Story, and Inscription. Some of the most beloved and most successful indie games of all time. I spoke with Jenny Zhao Jia and AP Thomson, two of the creators of Consume Me, which had just become the latest game to win the grand prize. I had known both Jenny and AP since their time at NYU, nearly a decade prior. And for AP, I understood that the award had long been his greatest ambition, and he'd achieved it. And here's where things get strange. A few months after Consume Me was released, later in 2025, I heard rumblings from jurors at the Independent Games Festival that AP had nearly finished another game, that a nearly complete build had even been submitted for this year's IGF. Turns out, since the early days of COVID lockdown, AP had been developing a surreal fairy tale that blended a handful of genres typically never seen in the same room. Its name? You guessed it, Titanium Court. Months later, the IGF would award it the grand prize, and in the process, AP became the only developer to win the IGF Seamus McNally Grand Prize in back-to-back years, and only the second developer ever to win twice. Now, naturally, I wanted to talk to AP about what that experience is like, and all of the other things that make Titanium Court so interesting. So, this week on Post Games, he won the biggest award in indie games, then he did it again. Act 1, what is a solo game developer in 2026? Act 2, making Titanium Court 1 hour at a time. Patreon bonus, AP Thompson's Titanium Court Book Club. I'll be giving you more details about that. And Act 3, the news of the week. It's a good one. Let's get to it. As a video game journalist who has been doxxed, I am constantly preaching the message of maintaining personal digital hygiene. Every person, not just journalists, should be aware of how much their personal information, phone numbers, addresses, health information, and so much more is available on the internet, and that those private details are being sold without your consent by data brokers and can be used for scams, for harassment, and plenty of other illegal activities. The problem is so big and so widespread that you could lose entire days trying to find who has your info, requesting that they remove it, and keeping these bad parties accountable. That is why I recommend Incogni. The moment you subscribe and you authorize removal, Incogni begins searching data brokers, online directories, people databases, and commercial databases. You get to watch it all happen in real time on your dashboard. When I signed up, over 200 removal requests were sent instantly. Within 30 minutes, 60 requests have been completed. That's not just a number. I could literally see the list of data brokers that had been contacted and begun the data removal process. Because trust is good, but when it comes to safety, I want to see some results. And I do. After leaving a big publisher, I needed to find the right personal data removal service. Incogni is exactly what I was looking for and has already brought me tremendous peace of mind. To get an exclusive 60% off an annual Incogni plan, go to incogni.com/postgames. That's all one word. Or click the link in the episode description box or the link in the show notes in the newsletter at post.games. Again, 60% off an annual Incogni plan at incogni.com/postgames. As a video game journalist who has been doxxed, I am constantly preaching the message of personal data hygiene. I think every person should be aware of how much their personal information, phone numbers, addresses, health information, and more is available for other people to find on the internet, and that those private details are being sold without your consent by data brokers and can be used for scams, harassment, and other illegal activity. The problem is so widespread, you could lose entire days to finding who has your info, requesting that they remove it, and keeping these bad parties accountable. That is why I recommend Incogni. The moment you subscribe and authorize removal, Incogni begins searching data brokers, online directories, people databases, and commercial databases. When I signed up, over 200 removal requests were sent instantly. Within 30 minutes, 60 requests had been completed. That is not just a number. I could literally look to see the data brokers that have been contacted on my behalf and begun the data removal process. Incogni's work doesn't end there. It keeps checking back in with the data brokers because with new personal data hacks, your info can begin to crop up in some of those old, gnarly places. After going independent as a journalist, I began searching for the right data personal removal service for me. Incogni is exactly what I was looking for and has already brought me tremendous peace of mind. I think it could do the same for you. To get an exclusive 60% off an annual Incogni plan, go to incogni.com/postgames or click the link in the episode description box. That's incogni.com/postgames. Act 1. What is a solo game developer in 2026? Today's guest is A.P. Thomson, the first game developer to win the Independent Games Festival's prestigious Seamus McNally Grand Prize in back-to-back years. He's also the first developer to appear on Post Games in back-to-back years. Admittedly, a tiny bit less historic of an achievement, but, an achievement nonetheless. AP's new game, Titanium Court, releases next week. It blends Match 3, strategy, visual novels, fairy tales, indie rock, and I would say like a Dada-esque aesthetic to create one of the most surprising and unforgettable games of the decade. Not just the year, my friends. I should say here, for transparency, I am so proud to have taught AP many, many years ago when he was pursuing his MFA at NYU Game Center. I also will add that I had the good fortune to playtest a near-final build of this game in December. Do I take any credit for his success? Absolutely not. But I do want to provide transparency because he's a friend. And, if I'm going to do the whole journalism thing, you should know our relationship and know that when I say this is one of the best games of the decade, I'm 100% unbiased and totally right. First, we chat about AP's life as one of the most decorated independent game makers and what that actually means. Spoilers, awards do not pay bills on their own. And in the second act, we get into Titanium Court specifically, walking through the game's origins without spoiling any of its many, many surprises. This is a conversation you will want to hear before you play the game. And then the Patreon bonus, well, that you'll want to hear after the game. And again, we'll talk more about that shortly. Let's go. You mentioned last time that we chatted that your ambitions were pretty modest. You wanted from Consume Me enough sales to continue making games at this scale with like tiny teams, maybe even solo. What I didn't know then when we were talking is that Consume Me was already sort of affording you that opportunity on the side. Can you tell folks the Titanium Court origin story?
We got to go back to 2019 when I had basically been working on Consume Me at that point for about 2 years. And I had side projects that whole time where I'd like prototype my own stuff and see what was interesting and work on it. And there were definitely a few of those side projects where I probably spent more time on them than I should have because they were interesting ideas, but very finicky to actually turn into something playable. And towards the end of 2019, I actually had a side project that was going pretty well. And I was like pretty interested in it. But then I had an idea for a game I really wanted to prototype out of nowhere. And there was a Ludum Dare happening that weekend. And so I was like, okay, well, I could use this as an excuse to prototype this idea, ignore the spirit of the game jam rules and just ignore the theme entirely and just work on the game that I was already thinking about making, basically. To be honest, I'm not sure I even remember the theme of the Ludum Dare because that's how little I was paying attention to it then. But the result of that was the original prototype for Titanium Court, which I think I called it Little Beetle Bottle Battle after the Dr. Seuss Fox and Socks section. But it had a lot of the bones of the very, very raw mechanics of Titanium Court. And at the end of that weekend, I was like, I feel like I could definitely turn that into something bigger for sure. But it wasn't until like a few months after that, so like January 2020, when I was looking at my current side project and I was like, I just got to a good checkpoint with this. I finished like chapter 1 of this side project and it feels like this one is very big and ambitious and it's going to take me a really long time to finish that. And I already have a really big, ambitious, going to take me a long time to finish it project I was working on, which was Consume Me. So I was like, you know what? How about I put this side project on the shelf for now and I just start working on what would become Titanium Court because I was like, oh yeah, I think I can like make a full game like real quick, like in a year. This should be like pretty simple to make like something small and just like release it.
I'm looking at the calendar right now. It's 2026.
Yeah. Well, specifically when I said it's only going to take a year, that was January 2020. And I think it was around then that I came up with the narrative conceit. And once I had a narrative conceit that felt like I could mesh it with the mechanics in a pretty seamless and fun way, then I was like, okay, this is the thing I kind of want to be working on and I'm excited about. And then COVID hit and I had a lot of free time. I think a lot of people have their various like COVID obsessions that kind of emerged. Like I think the common one was sourdough starters and stuff like that. And at least at the beginning of COVID for me, it was definitely Titanium Court. About a year in, and I started learning the guitar, and that ended up kind of reintegrating back into Titanium Court because I was using the music from that in the game. But yeah, Titanium Court was my original COVID obsession project.
We'll go into it in the spoiler section. I think there's a lot of COVID in this game as a player, but you said that making the game on the side, like the literal way that you were making it, maybe 40 minutes, maybe an hour or two a day, that it actually shapes the game itself. You've called it message in a bottle game design, which I think is a really beautiful term. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, as you said, I did not have very much time to work on it. On a normal workday where I'm working on Consume Me, I'd probably do a maximum 40 minutes on it, minimum maybe 20 minutes. And then I'd work on usually one of the 2 weekends as well, just give a full day to Titanium Court. And then Jenny and I also had this system where we would like spend 4 weeks just working on Consume Me. And then we'd have a week where we focus on other projects. And for me, my other project was Titanium Court. So that was like the time frame that was available to me. But basically, I kind of structured how I was designing the game around, I want to be able to make something whole for the game in this 40-minute period every day, or like in these short periods of time. So I built my whole narrative system around this idea of when I go and create a scene, everything you need to know about that scene and where it shows up in the game is just contained in that scene. I don't have to go look at any other part of the code. I don't have to like go open up any files other than the one representing the scene that I'm like making right now. And that was like a way of just focusing in on creating these little scenes. And then the way the system was just set up is I'd just be like, okay, that scene is there now. And then I'd be playing through the game, and it might take a bit before I got to the place where that scene actually shows up. But could be like weeks later, and they'd be like, oh, there's that scene. I put that in a while ago. So it is kind of like I'm just writing out these little messages and throwing them into the ocean.
That's so interesting because there's a character in the game that I would describe as Memento-esque in the way that their grasp for the world works. And that sounds so similar in a way to like what you're describing of how you yourself were making the game.
Yeah. Yeah, there are definitely parallels, and not just even that character, across multiple characters for various ways I was engaging with the world at that time.
Do you think that this type of development of like on-the-side game design will have to become more and more common as, sadly, more folks get laid off from traditional jobs and there are less opportunities for funding or publishing?
I don't know about have to become more common. I'm a little bit curious why it's not already more common than it is. I mean, there are, economic factors at work and everything. But I think there is, particularly if you generally work in small teams and you have full creative control over your work, you're not like stymied by corporate barriers of various kinds, then it can be a really useful way to work, to have multiple projects at the same time, because it lets you kind of like, they can share a certain amount of DNA in a lot of different ways. I think one of the most obvious ones is just that the code that is necessary for both games, you can write once. So like the gamepad system, I wrote that one for Consume Me first, and then I brought it over to Titanium Cord. But the like dialogue system in Consume Me was actually brought over from Titanium Cord. I'd work on one system in one game and then find a way of just easily using that system in the other game. I didn't have to design a new system for each game. They kind of got to share a lot of that stuff. And I think that there are games that are very different in terms of their tone and in terms of like how you engage with them. But there's also a lot of similarities between them just because they really do share a lot of the same origins.
Let's go back to talking about solo game development, because what you're describing here is like, yes, Titanium Court is one of your most solo projects. At the same time, it is of a piece of a larger whole, of the work that you do with other people. So what does it mean to be a solo developer in 2026?
Yeah, I think it's a very fraught definition. It's one over which a lot of, I guess, like cultural discussions or sparring is fought over, kind of like the boundaries of solo dev and what it means to be a solo dev, right? Because I think there's a lot of like, there is an appeal to a certain class around what the solo dev represents, right? Like, I think investors certainly love the idea of only having to pay one person as opposed to having to pay like hundreds of people to do this kind of stuff, right? And I think there's also like a lot of things going on with, in general, people like to attribute works to a single name, whether that is the name of a person or the name of a studio specifically. But I think something we discovered with Consume Me, because Consume Me was such a small team, there were basically 5 of us total, and we were like, well, it's so small, let's just say all 5 names when people ask us who made this game. I think we were also copying Minute did this as well. But yeah, it's definitely like, there was a lot of like various outlets that are just like, can we just include Jenny's name because this doesn't really fit in our CMS, or this doesn't really fit how we write headlines or how we write other things, like, right? It's like there's a lot of material pressure to only attribute one name to things in general. The solo-ness of Titanium Court's really interesting because it's like up until last fall, I think I was effectively the only person who had touched the keyboard and the mouse on the project, right? I'm the only one who's written any dialogue or written any code or drawn any illustrations or written any music or done any sound effects or any of that stuff. There's people who had played the game, right, and who had offered feedback on it. And I think that is actually an important part of developing the game. And generally, I like to include everybody who does that, have their name in the credits too, because this is how a game gets developed. Ultimately, you need players to actually be looking at it and telling you what they think. But then in the last fall is when I signed with Fellow Traveler. They've obviously done a lot of the work in publishing the game, and so there's plenty of marketing stuff that comes from them. Also, I said during my pitch, I was like, one of the things I really wanted to basically spend money on, assuming I got funding, is I wanted to hire an editor and just go over the 1.5 novels worth of text that is contained in Titanium Court and just like help make sure that I'm not abusing the English language, that we are good allies of the English language over here, and also just looking for misspellings and also looking for the consistency of terms and all of this stuff. And so I brought Jess Haskins on. She works for the game editors. That is her company, and it was great. And since her edits are now in the current version of the game, I can no longer claim to be the only person who was on the keyboard for this thing.
As someone who spent 15 years of my career as an editor, it's been really just nice to see editors getting involved in these games. I just spoke with the developer of Esoteric Ebb. Speaking of a lot of words, I think it's around 700,000 words in that game.
That's a lot more than Titanium Court.
It's a lot, man. But yeah, it really does show when you have somebody just giving that extra touch, that extra piece of advice, that extra step away from the author that, I don't know, you know how to trim it down and make it spruced up. I'd like to have you chew on a theory with me that I have about where independent games are, and it's related to music. And I call it the garage band era of video games. And the idea is, like, in the 80s and 90s, it was cheaper than ever for musicians to form a band. Each city had dozens, if like not hundreds of bands, and all of them would play these small open mic nights, and a few would land an opener for a national touring show, and a very, very select few would tour themselves, and maybe like one or two local bands would actually break big. But most people, because they understood all of that, they treated music as a passion or a hobby. And weirdly, I think games are in this similar spot. It's infinitely easier than ever before to make a game, and it's easier to release it. But also, where it's different is games travel freely. And so every local developer or local band is competing on effectively the same stage. And I think that's created all sorts of weird incentives and expectations amongst game makers, specifically around the idea that like every game should be profitable or a job. I'm curious, as someone who is familiar with at least both spaces, does that comparison hold water for you?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of that there. I guess because I, through going to open mics really regularly around here, started getting more involved in the local music scene here. And it's one of those things where if you go to a lot of local shows, it can feel very vibrant and alive. I guess it's just, maybe this was also true in the 80s based on your description, but it sounds like a lot of people are doing that because it is like they're serious about their music. They would want to put out the best record that they can, but I think very few people have illusions about becoming like the next big pop star who's making tons of money. I think it's so rare that happens even to extremely talented, very good musicians. A lot of the people I see locally, I'm just like, yes, they're like as good as, if not better, than a lot of these extremely popular pop stars. And a lot of people might agree if they heard their music, but it's like, how do you get that many people to hear their music in the current environment? There's so much out there already.
I guess that's where I get back to that idea of making games on the side, of this idea of as basically infinite games are out in the world, I just keep wondering if we will see a change in perspective of people making things, not because they believe that it will make money, but that it is the reason that we make art, because you have something that you want to say and you want to put it out there, and you believe that there are people who need to hear it.
I think a lot of people are doing it for the love of the game already and have been doing it for the love of the game for a very long time. And I think that those are the people who were most likely going to remember games by in the future once we're like through this period. This is like a very tough period for games as economic engines or as careers, right? Things have gotten extremely rough in that avenue. And I don't know, it's like, yeah, there's a lot going on here in this question, and there's a lot going on in general in the space. I think that it's like I know that Meredith has also been talking about this a lot in various interviews that she's given. And I'm sort of speaking from the perspective of someone who if I could make this be the only job that I need to do, that would be great. I love that. Is if I could like spend my days doing what I was doing, which is like just have enough time in the day to work on these games, and then eventually they're finished and they come out and people play them and get excited about them, right? And it's like one of those, I don't know, I think one of the things about the way that the market has kind of like segmented, both in music and in games, is it feels like the middle has just completely disappeared from any discussion of success, right? It's like you kind of have two outcomes, which is either you make $0 or you make an unfathomable amount of money. It's pretty rare that you get creators who are just like, I made a couple moderately successful games and that pays the rent and it gives me enough money that I can go continue to make a few moderately successful games. I think those developers do exist. One that comes to mind is Jake Burkett talks about this a lot. He is self-described as being that kind of developer. Gray Alien Games, Regency Solitaire, upcoming Forbidden Solitaire. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but he's talked a lot about how his approach to game creation has always been to basically just keep putting them out. He describes none of his releases as ever having been a hit, but because he's just got such a large like back catalog and library of them that he has managed to effectively survive as a independent creator. He and his wife run the studio together and they're able to sustain like enough income for their family just through moderate successes. And that just seems so rare. I feel like that's the only example I can think of someone who's like managing to do that right now. And ideally that would be a lot more common than it is.
It's an admirable goal to be able to do that. Before we move on, and we'll dig into Titanium Court and you winning a second IGF Grand Prize in the second half in just a second. But before that, one last question about being a successful solo and micro game developer yourself. There are now people who aspire to be the next you, truly. Does that weigh on you at all?
Does it weigh on me? It certainly, I can tell you one aspect of this is that I was at GDC last week and kind of doing a lot of interviews. Some of them had been planned in advance, some of them not so planned in advance. Like there's a whole media tent that you go to if you win an IGF backstage, and they like you go through a bunch of different press outlets and they ask you a bunch of rapid fire questions. And basically towards the end of the week, I was like, to do all those, I kind of was in autopilot the whole time. It kind of get like a vertigo feeling of, wow, I sure was saying a lot of things without thinking about it that are going to be on the record and public. The kind of like a little bit of a queasy feeling of like, oh man, I should maybe pay a little bit more attention to what I'm saying. I don't think I said anything incriminating or representative of bad morals, but you never know.
I strongly doubt it.
That's maybe an immediate thought. It's sort of a weird thing to think that people say they like want to be like me, partly because I'm just like, you don't want to be like me. You want to be like you because you want to be like the best version that you can be, which is not going to be like me because you are a different person than me. Maybe you want to do, I don't know, similar things, but the way that you do those similar things is going to be quite a bit different. And it's more exciting for me to think about like people being themselves. I don't know if it's useful to tell someone who's like kind of like who's admiring another person to be like, no, the person you should admire is yourself. The person you should be aspiring to be is you, and the best you could, I don't know.
It's true. It's just a hard thing to hear because is there anything harder to look at than ourselves?
Yeah.
Anyway, how about we take a quick break? And then when we come back, we'll talk about Titanium Court, a game that is decidedly you, and I don't think could be anybody else. In this time of year, it always makes me rethink what's in my closet. I'm trying to keep fewer things but better ones, pieces that are well made and easy to wear all the time, and that is why I keep coming back to Quince. The fabrics feel elevated, the fits are thoughtful, and the pricing actually makes sense. Quince makes high-quality, everyday essentials using premium materials like 100% European linen and their ridiculously soft flow-knit activewear fabric. Their men's linen pants and shirts are lightweight, breathable, and comfortable, basically the perfect layer for spring. And the pants, they strike the right balance between laid back and refined, so you look put together without trying too hard. The very best part is that their prices are 50 to 60% less than similar brands. How do they do it? Quince works directly with ethical factories and cuts out the middlemen, so you're paying for quality, not brand markup. Everything is designed to last and make getting dressed easy. And let me tell you, I am enjoying it. The European linen relaxed short sleeve shirt, that is my thing. I love being able to put something on for a nice evening out if I'm going to dinner or the movies with my wife. Listen, I'm a gamer. I'm not used to trying to impress people, and it's nice to look nice, and it's even nicer to do it and not feel like I'm spending all of my money. If you are looking to do that too, you can refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/postgames for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/postgames.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 350 plus undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Act 2, making titanium court 1 hour at a time. You have now made at least 3 match 3 games, as far as I can count. You got Beglitched, Swap Sword, and Titanium Court.
Those are the commercial ones.
A certain type of gamer won't think of match 3 as, let's say, like a hardcore or a prestigious genre, and yet 2 of those games have won IGF awards. What is it about match 3 that you find so compelling?
That's a good question, because I got a lot of thoughts about this. I guess the first thing that I'll say is actually something that I kind of like picked up from Bennett Foddy, creator of Getting Over It and most recently Baby Steps, along with Maxie and Gabe. I saw him give a talk at MIT when I was, I think I was either still an undergrad or I was doing like a 5th year master's. I can't remember. I think he had just released Clop, which was the horse one, the horse sequel to Quap, which is pretty good. If folks have not played that one, they should go check that out. But he was talking about like how he'd like to design his games around these kind of like fundamentally pleasurable or engaging experiences that we do on a day-to-day or like just randomly, right? So the inspiration for Clop was basically a game that you play by drumming your fingers on the keyboard. It's kind of like just drumming your fingers on the table, sort of a pleasurable, engaging, tactile experience, right? And I think that match 3s, one of the things that is most interesting about them is they kind of fundamentally are that. They engage the pattern matching stimuli in your brain. It's just an engaging thing to look at a grid and look for little patterns that you can match, right? So that's one aspect of match 3s that I think make them really strong. Not even necessarily as a genre, so much as a mechanic or interaction. The approach that I'm taking with match 3s is I don't think of them as a genre. I think of them as a mechanic, effectively. And then the second thing about match 3s is that I spent a lot of time studying procedural generation techniques for a while. I'm like maybe less hot on the use of procedural generation as I used to be, just because I'm now aware of like how much design actually goes into making those work. I think there's an appeal to them, to someone who's like, oh, I can get the computer to design the level for me, and it turns out, and that'll be easier than designing it myself. And the truth is, no, it won't, because designing it yourself is going to be a lot easier and often produce a better result. But I guess the thing about match 3s that I really like about them is that they are a very simple and very effective level generator. A lot of what people want out of a generated level is not a lot of boring sequences. Like, they want variety is often where people are coming from, and match 3s enforce variety as a rule. You just cannot have 3 of the same thing all lined up, because that'll disappear and be replaced by something else. Beglitched and Swap Sword both were kind of like exploring this idea of a match 3 is a type of structured, randomly generated grid that produces a specific set of patterns that work really well as levels, and what those levels are being used for can be different sorts of games. It can be like in Be Glitched, the level could effectively be used as like a Minesweeper grid or like a tiny spatial deductive puzzle. Or in the case of Swap Sword, the level could be like a little roguelike dungeon where you're kind of like moving a character around and attacking enemies. And in the case of Titanium Court, it's saying like, oh, they could also be like a tower defense map, basically. And I guess the third thing about match threes is I think that despite how oversaturated they are as a genre, kind of underexplored as a mechanic. In my opinion, I feel like there was, for a while, every kind of match three game was similar to Bejeweled or Candy Crush, where it's like really you're trying to like maximize the score, or you're like trying to clear out the grid if you're like playing in puzzle mode or something like that. But it wasn't until Puzzle Quest Challenge of the Warlords for the Nintendo DS, which is still the best puzzle quest and absolutely worth playing, that someone was like, hey, how about we use match three as a mechanic for another game? But then it kind of became like, well, now every match three is either Bejeweled or it's Puzzle Quest. So it's like either you have like just making matches for score purposes, or you're going to make matches on one screen and then on the other screen will be the other game, right? So it's like Henry Hatsworth is another example of that, of literally like the match three is one screen and then a platformer is the other one. And I feel like that kind of became like, if people were going to do an exploration of match threes mechanically, they kind of went that route of the dual screen route. And hey, maybe the existence of the Nintendo DS had something to do with that exploration, but it still felt like we weren't really fully exploring what you could do with a match three grid. Just looking at asking the question, what are the tiles? Can the tiles represent something? If they represent something specific, what does that tell us about like what kind of game we can make with a match three grid of these tiles?
I just want to thank the commenters who are already rushing to point out that is the, I think, third time somebody has brought up Henry Hatsworth on the Post Games podcast, making this the most advertisement for Henry Hatsworth ever.
Did you really think I would not bring up Henry Hatsworth having
I
like
knew
three
exactly what I was doing.
games?
Well, okay, I want to talk about gender and genres, because match three and puzzle genres are often associated with casual gaming and often gendered as like, quote, for girls or for women. The other genre in Titanium Court is strategy, which is a genre often labeled as the most hardcore and masculine. Now, obviously, gender is bullshit in these scenarios, but what, I guess, one, why, as somebody who uses these genres often, why do you think they have been reduced in that way? And then also, what did you find when you brought those two things together?
I guess one thing I will say is that even within those kind of the like gender genre division, even if people had the perception that like the feminine side of that divide was like less hardcore, they were just wrong about that. They're just wrong about that. Like the feminine side of that divide featured very hardcore games. Like my mom was super into solitaire games, has been super into solitaire games her whole life. It's like watching my mom play Free Cell or Spider Solitaire or variants like that. She's pretty hardcore as far as gamers go. This is a complex, like turn-based tactical thing that can be pretty difficult to play at this level of skill. And she's got it because she's been doing it forever, right? I don't know. It feels like that binary has existed, but I think it is a perceptual one, right? I think those games have always been hardcore. And I think a similar thing could be said about the masculine side of that perceptual boundary, right? It contains these elements of non-skill that are like, it contains the flashing lights. It contains the juice, like, oh, you're gonna play Gears of War and you're gonna like successfully do the quick time event and like your chainsaw is gonna go straight through that guy and they'll play a little riff on the guitar and it's gonna sound so awesome. You're gonna feel so cool, right? It's like none of that particularly required much of you. Like to do it, that's mostly like giving. That's the thing that casual games are accused of doing. They are accused of, oh, you didn't do anything and the game just celebrated you. And it's like, yeah, man, AAA games do that all the time. Like they are all about like making you feel like the most important guy around or most important person around. They don't generally do that by having you actually beat the most important, skilled, talented person around. No, it's like a theme park ride. They've constructed a path for you to feel that way. And so that's why I think that gender genre divide, I think, is fundamentally perceptual more than anything else. I think that people aren't willing to acknowledge the casual elements of hardcore games and frequently aren't willing to acknowledge the hardcore elements of casual games.
One last question on gender specifically, which is the game's color palette can be described either as the trans flag or a baby blue, baby pink, like what you would see in a hospital. I assume the former. What is going on with the color palette here?
This is fun. The answer is really simple. You know the game Downwell?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that game had options for different color palettes. And yeah. When I was like making a prototyping kit years ago, I was probably in like Bennett's prototyping class or something. I was just like, I'm going to pick my favorite Downwell palette.
Nice.
And so that's what it is. It's my favorite palette from Downwell. It's probably, I can't remember which of the palettes it is. And honestly, the way that Downwell uses the colors is very different than the way I use them.
What I love about this game is this is a game about how things can be multiple things at once. And it is a game that is playing with genres and gender. And also, the answer can sometimes just be that it was the best color palette from Downwell. I love that.
Yeah.
I do want to go back to the strategy genre very briefly. In an interview with the Game Insider, you said, games are great at telling jokes with systems, and strategy games as a whole are great at being funny. What do you mean by that? Because I don't think most people listening associate strategy games with humor.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's better to associate them with pranks. And I think this is a thing that they should be leaning more into. I'm not saying they're great at expressing this part of their identity right now, but I think it is absolutely an untapped aspect of the strategy identity is that when you are trying to win a strategy game, you are trying to outsmart someone, and generally that means you are trying to outprank them, right? So it's like, oh, I'm going to like set up an ambush here. What is an ambush? It's a prank, right? Put down little traps, or like, oh, I'm going to like send this guy over here, but that's a decoy. You know, secretly I'm coming from this side, right? I feel like there's a prank-like quality to what is happening there. And strategy games, I don't know, just it feels like we should be exploring that aspect of them a little bit more.
I want to talk about what I think is the core idea of the game, and I mentioned it earlier, but this concept of two ways of understanding a single object. And like, here's a game that is both a strategy game and a match 3 game, that it is the cliche masculine, cliche feminine genres, but it extends so much beyond that. Like, there are small details, like an egg on the battlefield is also a football, or that the fights that happen on the battlefield will be represented when, like, we get a close-up view of them as, like, a baseball player hitting the ball or a businessman shouting. What has attracted you to this idea of two ways of understanding a single thing?
I'm not sure what has attracted me to it. It's just something that I kind of like. I like things that have double meanings. This is actually one of the first things that Jenny told me about her idea for Consume Me was the title. And I was like, I love that title because it has multiple meanings associated with it, right? It's food associated. It's about eating, but it is also like about becoming obsessed with something. That's like also what it means for something to consume you. And it's also fundamentally what the player is doing to Jenny. Like, the player is engaging in consumption of Jenny's life, right? And to me, I was like, I don't know, I just really like it when there are multiple meanings to a given phrase, to a given thing. I think that in Titanium Core, there was like, I like to find opportunities for there to be a thing and it to be represented as something else. I think this is kind of emerged in the early design of the game. I was inspired by Dicey Dungeons, which basically has this quality where the different jobs you can play as in that game feel like you're almost playing a different game. Like they really put a lot of like spin onto what it is you're doing, but the fundamental elements of what you're engaging with are still the same. You still have like the dice, you still have kind of like the enemies that you're fighting through and everything like that. And my original plan for Titanium Court was I was kind of like, oh, I like this idea. Can I use it narratively to like represent multiple different perspectives on the same world. I think the original plan was there were going to be 4 different courts, and Titanium Court would just be the first one, and then there'd be like a second one and a third one, and then there would be something that combined them all at the end. That got rescoped eventually into others, but the idea is each of them would have a different like way that it was structured and organized as like a society or a biome or what have you, right? And I don't know, I was just like really into this idea of let's look at the same elements in the game from a bunch of different angles. It's also just fun to have a little bit of playfulness of, oh, this thing kind of looks like one thing, but what if it's actually this other thing?
Your work really reminds me of David Byrne, and this is the lead singer of the Talking Heads, but now does a lot of solo work.
Yeah, I read his book recently. He had this like part in his book relevant to our previous conversation where he talked about, oh yeah, we were able to play a couple shows at CBGB's and that would cover rent for the month. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, different time. Now he can draw a doodle and sell it for $8,000. So he's also living a different life.
Yeah.
But Byrne, so much of his music is looking at something that is very mundane and understood, that you look at a McDonald's on a highway in the Midwest and you know what that object is. And yet, through his eyes, you are also seeing it as something else, something more profound. I'm curious if Byrne's art influenced you. I also see they might be giants in your work. There are a number of artists that I feel like I'm seeing, and I'm curious who you point to as inspiration.
Yeah. So I guess I've listened to Talking Heads before, and I've seen Stop Making Sense, and I've read his book as well, but I wouldn't say I'm like a huge Talking Heads fan. Like I have not really just like listened to all of their albums all the way through. I think I like put on some of their greatest hits at some point. So I don't know if I would say Byrne is so much an influence. They Might Be Giants is interesting because I feel like in another universe, they were a band I could have been extremely into. I was certainly aware of them. I was aware of songs of theirs that I liked. Yet I think that was a time in my life where I wasn't really buying music so much as my friends would burn CDs for me, and I don't think any of my friends were They Might Be Giants fans. So I think that's like how I never really listened to their whole catalog and got a sense of that. But yeah, I'm trying to think. I think there have been some pretty strong influences. Musically, probably one of my biggest influences is the Mountain Goats, because I learned to play guitar by just learning every single song off of All Hail West Texas, and I guess that probably ended up informing how I ended up writing songs as well. A lot of people have been like, oh yeah, I love the Mountain Goats reference. I'm like, what reference? I wasn't making a reference. I'm not trying to copy them. I'm just trying to do my own stuff. But yeah, I think that if we're talking, I think though the quality that you're referring to with Byrne and like this kind of like taking something mundane and twisting it a little so that you see the magic behind it. I would say of like the various things that have influenced me while working on Titanium Court, the one that maybe does that the most is John Boyce videos.
Oh yeah, that makes total sense. Is there one in particular that you recommend people check out?
Usually when I'm trying to introduce people to his stuff, I start with The Bob Emergency, just because I think it's like a great introduction to his whole deal. That one's a 2-parter, so I think there might be better like one-shot starters, but he does an incredible job at finding the profound in effectively the chaotic, right? Or like finding the profound within the mundane. He's like fantastic at doing that. And I think that his documentaries do a thing that I've been like kind of ruminating on a lot, or I've also been doing this, but haven't really been thinking too much about it. But this idea of kind of like the reverse punchline, where it's like, generally the way a joke punchline works is start with the normal, and then the punchline is like we veer to the absurd or the funny or the irreverent, right? Versus the reverse one is we start with an air of the irreverent or the absurd or the funny, and then veer into the sincere, right? And I think that is extremely effective. There's something that feels profoundly human about it. It's very present in a lot of his videos.
Yeah. Let's veer into the sincere.
Sure.
Both times that you have won the IGF Grand Prize, you have used the majority of your speech to denounce the cruelty of the U.S. government's treatment on our friends and our neighbors, from trans people in the United States to those killed in Gaza. Your games aren't explicitly political, and yet Titanium Court is a game about a kingdom in which governments makes little, if any, sense, and every day there's a new war. So, do you want players to find a political reading in this game?
I'm not sure if there is a very clear-cut political reading in this game. It's not really up to me to decide what the political reading ultimately is, because I think that the nature of things means there is absolutely a political reading in there, and you can probably actually infer a lot about the politics of both the time this was created and the politics of the creator based on different little hints that exist in there. I think that there is a sense of, though, of, I think if we're going back to talking about like having two things represented at once, right? Which is that you've got a new war every single day, but the way that the fairies treat the wars, that might as well just be the local high school football match. They are immortal. Wars aren't serious. They don't think about them that way. So instead of it being like this terrible, serious thing, it's just like, no, that's just light entertainment. And you could certainly do a reading of that and America's approach to war. Absolutely. That is not necessarily what I was thinking, but if you consider that the way that this is presented in the game as like the culture of sport superimposed over the culture of war, I think you can see pictures of America in that image, right? Like it's like very, I don't know. I think there's like a country that has been the undisputed military superpower of the globe for as long as America has. Maybe it just starts acting this way. I think we can see this with recent current events. Is like the president initiated a war on very shaky grounds because he just believed that there would not be any consequences because of how big and tough this country is. And it's like, yeah, man, I think you are now finding out.
There's like you would see at a basketball match scoreboard in the game that tracks your wins and losses. And when I first played the game back months ago, I was like, oh, that's very funny. And then we've since Venezuela and Iran. And the idea of Trump putting a scoreboard in the White House seems so wholly believable. Like,
did that actually happen?
It sounds like it could have. I don't think it has yet, but I believe it. And yeah, you're right. There's one thing that I want to hit on, and then we'll wrap this up, which is that you have said that winning the IGF Grand Prize, that was a big goal for you. The very specific recognition from your peers, from the people you admire, was a goal unto itself. You have now become the first person to win it 2 years in a row. What is enough? What is your motivation after being the dog that caught the mail truck?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I think it's maybe good to clarify that that was a goal I set for myself before I made all these games. It was like, I think it was probably like back in 2010 or 2011. I was like, oh, I'm really interested in making these games, and I feel like this is a thing to aim for, because it felt like something that like anybody could submit to it, and it just seemed like let's go for it. Let's see like how good we can make these things and like whether we can receive this recognition. Many years later, I would say that it is very gratifying to receive that recognition. But I think at this point, the place that I'm at is like kind of what we were talking about earlier of like, now I'm in it for the love of the game. Now I'm just like, I think it's almost like making these projects was very satisfying, putting so much of myself into it, like putting so much of my creative output into it. It was really fun. I would like to keep doing that. I would like that to continue being my job.
Is it your job now? If you're comfortable talking about it, like, if Consume Me, the fund was covering the cost to make Consume Me, which you afforded you this opportunity. Are you having to take on other work, or does it look like this is your future?
The money Consume Me received was like what sustained me and Jenny for a while, and it's not all gone yet. And obviously we're getting revenue in as well, so that can continue. But also, when I signed with Fellow Traveler, I got some funding to finish the game, which will certainly last me long enough to, get a prototype together for the next project. Absolutely. I think the question of like how well Titanium Court sells also tells me how much runway I have for the next project. It has been my job to kind of exclusively work on these games since Consume Me received its funding, and it looks like for the foreseeable future that will continue to be the case. I think that if Titanium Court makes no money at all, and I don't know, I like run out of runway trying to pitch the next thing, that might be a different conversation, but that's not in the immediate near future.
Yeah, I think that there are some people listening right now who are realizing that winning the most prestigious award in independent video games no longer guarantees financial success, and are probably a little terrified.
It's funny because I can tell you roughly, I can tell you the exact number of wish lists your game will get if you win the Seamus McNally Grand Prize, because it was the same number last year as it was this year.
Are you comfortable sharing it?
Yeah, okay. I don't know. Keep in mind, of course, that like wish lists are with the number you're getting on a regular basis, they go up and down. But if we're talking about the spike that you get from winning the Seamus McNally Grand Prize, I think it has been about 2,000 wish lists each time. Like, it kind of goes through spikes, and then you get the tails, and it's like right now the tail is fatter than it was before the Seamus McNally, so can I really say that it was like only that many? But that's just sort of like the big immediate spike kind of lands on that.
Yeah. At least you have the support of your peers. And hopefully some tremendous sales, because it's a fantastic game. Hey, thank you so much for doing this. Where can people find the game?
You can find Titanium Court on Steam. You can go wishlist it there. I think we're going to be on some other platforms as well, but I don't think their store pages are set up. So at the moment, you can go to Steam and look for Titanium Court.
A Patreon bonus, AP Thomson's Titanium Court Book Club, coming to you on April 27th. Now, this is normally where we split, but things are a little bit different this week. Patreon supporters, AP stuck around to record a book club bonus episode. We talk about Titanium Court's story, its themes, its influences, and even its ending. It is a full spoilers conversation, but out of respect to the game, I am publishing it as a standalone episode on the Patreon on April 27th. Sickos who finish the game in its first weekend will have it just in time for their Monday commute, and everybody else who supports the show on Patreon, the episode will be waiting for you whenever you're ready. Go at your own pace. Truly go at your own pace. You'll enjoy it more. If this, plus weekly bonus segments, monthly bonus episodes, and an ad-free experience sound good to you, visit patreon.com/postgames and support independent journalism for only $5 a month. What a steal. Now, how about all of us head to the news of the week? Act 3, the news of the week. This week, you are the news of the week. That is right. I am asking you to send me the news. Why would I do that? A great question. Seems like it kind of defeats the whole point of you paying with your either literal money or just your time to listen to the show, but I need your help. Next week, I'm giving a talk at NYU Game Center, and you should come and check it out. It's on Thursday. This is going to age like soured milk. Listen, you should come, and if you can't come, you can hear it on Twitch, or you can watch the upload on YouTube, or you can just wait till I do a version of it for the show, which I'm going to do this summer. Anyway, the entire thing it's a navel-gazing thing that I typically do not like to do. It's just about journalism. Specifically, it's about the 9 lives of video game journalism and how, if you plot them out in a graph, it will give you a trajectory of where things go from here. It's also about how video games journalism isn't dead, despite the many claims otherwise. Now, I am not saying that it is doing great. You know, to be alive, you just need a pulse. And I want an idea of what that pulse looks like. And that's where you come in. I would love all of you to flood the comments, flood them on the Patreon, flood them on the newsletter at post.games. Flood them wherever you'd like. You can hit me at Blue Sky, anywhere. Share with me where you get video game news. I would love for you to share criticism, whether that be podcast or YouTube videos or magazines. It could be anything. And I would especially love for you to show me where you get like original news, original reporting. What is original reporting? Great question. It could be pretty much anything that has an interview. I mean, that's going to be getting some reporting in there. It could be people digging up facts that were otherwise hidden, like somebody finding some court cases. My pal, Nicole Carpenter, an expert at that. Anything that is new information that wouldn't otherwise have been available, right? This could be video, like our friends at NoClip. It could be a newsletter. It could be original reporting. I already mentioned Nicole Carpenter, Megan Fruchmanesh. So many wonderful people who I rely on as reporters, really to frame up this show. Our friends at Aftermath, I mean, all across the place. GameFile, well, you know what I mean. I don't want to put titles into your mouth. I want to know where you are getting it. Where are you learning the new things about what is going on in video games? And again, just drop it in the comments. I appreciate it. As always, y'all are just the absolute best. You're just the best. I'm so lucky to have this job, and I'm so lucky to work for y'all. And I can't wait to learn more about where you learn more about video games. Okay, that basically works. Let's keep moving. That is a wrap on Titanium Court. At least for now. There's still the bonus Patreon episode, the Game of the Year conversations, and no shit, the game hasn't even come out yet. Next week, the Post Games Arbor Day special, a mini golf game about climate collapse. I chat with the creators of Mini Golf. Until then, a reminder, post-game supporters get the show and the newsletter early on Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern, usually much earlier than that. They get extra acts and bonus materials. This week, Patreon listeners got an IOU. But what an IOU it is. On April 27th, patrons get a full bonus episode in which Titanium Court designer AP Thomson answers my questions about the entirety of Titanium Court. Spoilers be damned. From the beginning to the end. Plus, each month, subscribers get a bonus episode in my ongoing series Past Games, in which I share deep dive histories into the gaming anniversaries of 2026. The upcoming bonus episode tells the history of Dark Souls, and my guests, there are two of them, are the people who wrote not just the book on Dark Souls, but the books. People who have dedicated their life to the series. And here's another great thing about the Patreon. No ads on anything. Subscribe to the Patreon at patreon.com/postgames. Subscribe to the newsletter for free at post.games. Post Games logo by James Bareham. Theme by Mark Sparling. All interviews on Post Games are edited for concision and clarity. And I'd like to give a special thank you to this week's guest, AP Thomson. If you like the show, please leave a review on Apple or Spotify, or share the show with a friend. We just hit 420 reviews on Apple, a real achievement. Sadly arrived just a few days ahead of 420, but I'm not going to complain. Now that we've hit it, we can keep going up. I think 666 is coming. We got 6969. So many great numbers to achieve, and only possible with your help. And that is it. Now, to take us out, an original song by AP Thomson. I'll see you next week.
Hey everybody, my name is AP Thomson. Today I wanted to play a summer song, because, it felt like the right time of year for it. What with midwinter, and we just got done with the cold part, and now we're in the wet part. So this song is very much a early summer, late spring kind of song. It is called Back Bay Shaws, and it is about three things. It is about being young, dropping acid, and going to the grocery store. Summer hasn't yet assumed the throne. Doors open wide, and the cold air inside rushes out. And I've had 200 to 300 micrograms. You've had less, which makes you the leader, I guess. Lead me well, lead me true. You lead me to the frozen food and ask me to think about how it came to be. But friend, I think you've misjudged my current levels of reality. Now follow me. I know exactly where we need to be. Head and shoulders, Pantene Dove for women, Dove for men, Suave Vita herbal essences. Let their tendrils pull you in, let them smother you with sights and smells and colors. But on your face, a look of despair. You scream, how can there be so many green fruit scented products for your hair? How? 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 From a distant planet, may I help you? From an alternate timeline, sir, may I help you? An echo of an echo, may I help you? Are you boys alright? What a question. We're more than alright, we're everything. Just like you. Have you even seen all this shampoo? And now a brief interruption from your street smarts. Remember, kid, that around these parts, may I help you generally means buy something or get the fuck out. Same exit we came in. Think we got what we came for. Assuming that what we came for is truth and meaning and a greater understanding of our place in the cosmic picture. Wait a minute. We were there to buy Gatorade. Oh well.